at the Municipal Building in Fort Lee. Welcome to our second year Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution. Good afternoon. Mayor Sokolich of Fort Lee and I like to thank you for sharing second year anniversary of Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution in Borough of Fort Lee. This proclamation was signed last year on January 16. With our country divided today, we hope that today's program can help to reunite and start the healing process. Due to the pandemic, we have pre-recorded the messages by following dignitaries. 1. Council President Fort Lee, Joe Sibieri, and I will read his message. 2. Dr. Carol Furumoto, daughter of Fred Korematsu of Fred Korematsu Institute, who will speak about her father and keeping his legacy alive. 3. State Senator of New Jersey, Senator Lagana, who sponsored and passed Joint Resolution 95. And just a couple of days ago, he was able to pass the Senate floor, 33-0 vote. 4. Susan Onuma, President of Japanese American Association and community leader in Tri-State. She was recently awarded the Japanese Empress Award for her services in community. 5. Assemblyman Mukherjee, who chaired the Assembly Judiciary Committee 2 days ago and sponsored Joint Assembly Resolution 182, which passed 5 days ago. Mako Yoshioka, President of Japan-U.S. Alliance in New Jersey. She's our local community leader in Bergen County. Assemblyman Borelli, we have co-sponsored Assembly Joint Resolution 182, along with Assemblyman Mukherjee. 8. Ambassador Yamanouchi of Consulate General of Japan in New York. And he was instrumental in introducing me to the lawmakers of New Jersey who sponsored Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution. And my wife and I will be doing the closing remarks. Carolyn and I are married 49 years. Today is our anniversary. When I came back from Vietnam in 1971, when I had PTSD and I was exposed to Agent Orange, she had nursed me and supported me throughout 1970s. Without her, I might have been homeless in New York City. And she is truly my guardian angel. Before we hear from our speakers today, I'd like to read an apology letter written by President Clinton in 1993. This was right after President Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. And this is the apology letter which I'm going to be reading. The White House, Washington, October 1st, 1993. It took 5 years from President Reagan to President Bush Sr. and to President Clinton. I received mine October 1st, 1993. And the letter reads, over 50 years ago, the United States government unjustly interned, evacuated, or relocated you and many other Japanese Americans. Today, on behalf of your fellow Americans, I offer a sincere apology to you for the actions that unfairly denied Japanese Americans and their families fundamental liberties during World War II. In passing the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, we acknowledge the wrongs of the past and offer redress to those who endure such grave injustice. In retrospect, we understand that the nation's actions were rooted deeply in racial prejudice, wartime hysteria, and lack of political leadership. We must learn from the past and dedicate ourselves as a nation to renewing the spirit of equality and our love of freedom. Together, we can guarantee a future with liberty and justice for all. You and your family have my best wishes for the future. Bill Clinton. When Executive Order 9066 was signed by President Roosevelt in 1942, our family, my parents, and my 4 older sisters were given 10 days' notice to the incarceration camp with just one carry-on suitcase. I was born in Turtle Lake segregation camp in October of 1944. My wife's parents married in the same camp, and her grandfather died in the same camp. And it took another 75 years for the U.S. Supreme Court to rule this unconstitutional. This is why today, the Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution is so important, that we will not repeat this mistake again. Now, messages from our dignitaries. First, Joseph L. Sivieri Jr., Fort Lee Borough Council President. And the message reads, "This day commemorates justice, recognize a wrong that, although finally righted, must not be forgotten. This a teaching moment for all Americans. We are the United States of America, created by immigrants seeking safe harbor to raise their families, to lead a better life, and at the same time to make our country better place, a more perfect union. Dividing our citizens by any means will not and cannot help to achieve the goal of our founding fathers. We can start with something very simple. Let's recognize our neighbors, both citizens and non-citizens together, equal as one. How about not referring to our neighbors as Italian Americans, Hispanic Americans, or African Americans, or Chinese Americans, or Japanese Americans? No need to use subset, which may tend to divide us. Let's just say we are Americans. Let's not forget or take for granted that we have been blessed to live in a great nation. It is our duty as citizens to preserve, defend, and protect it, and to make it a better place for our children and their grandchildren. Teaching them the lesson learned and commemorated on this day will help us to achieve that goal. May God bless America. Joseph Sivieri. Thank you, Joe. Now to the next speaker.
Hi, I'm State Senator Joe Lagana from the 38th Legislative District, and I'm very proud that today the New Jersey State Senate is honoring Mr. Fred Korematsu. Mr. Korematsu was a Japanese American who was forced to an internment camp during World War II. Mr. Korematsu fought against the executive order and was convicted for not going to the internment camp. Mr. Korematsu fought against that conviction by going all the way to the Supreme Court, which ultimately ruled against him. That did not deter Mr. Korematsu, who spent a lifetime fighting against racial injustice and inequality. Eventually, he had his conviction overturned and was even awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton. I'm truly inspired by Mr. Korematsu's story and his lifelong fight to end racial injustice and inequality. I also want to thank Mr. Tak Furumoto with the Japanese American Association of New York for his tireless advocacy and for being a great American. Mr. Furumoto was born in an internment camp during World War II and later went on to serve in the United States military. Again, grateful to him and the association for helping me with this resolution, and I'm honored to sponsor it and have it pass in the Senate today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Onuma, and I'm the president of the Japanese American Association of New York. I am also a resident of Maplewood, New Jersey, and my father was incarcerated at Heart Mountain, Wyoming during World War II. I am so grateful to Tak Furumoto for leading the effort to get Fred Korematsu Day recognized in the Borough of Fort Lee and now in the state of New Jersey. While Fred Korematsu is a Japanese American, this is not a Japanese American holiday, but an American holiday, and as you have heard, an American story. New Jersey is home to a diverse and vibrant immigrant population. Nearly 1 in 4 New Jersey residents is an immigrant, and 1 in 6 are U.S. born with an immigrant parent. They contribute millions of dollars in taxes and constitute a vital force to New Jersey's economy and social fabric. And yet, as we have witnessed over the last several years, and especially this past year, racist infringement of civil rights are still being perpetuated against immigrants and people of color. To quote from Amanda Gorman's very moving inaugural poem, "While democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated." So it is my great hope that we use the legacy of Fred Korematsu to teach New Jersey residents, and especially our young and future leaders, that one should always speak up when justice is being denied, and that one person can make a difference, and that person can be you. Thank you again to Tak Furumoto, Ambassador Yamanouchi, and New Jersey's political leaders for helping make Fred Korematsu Day a state-recognized holiday. Thank you so much.
My privilege to sponsor AJR 182, which passed out of the Assembly Judiciary Committee earlier this month and designates January 30th as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. Despite being rejected from the military, being fired as a shipyard welder, and being ordered to comply with a curfew and incarceration under President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066 and Civil Exclusion Order 34, all because of his Japanese heritage, even though he was an American citizen, Fred Korematsu stood up for his own constitutional rights and for those of his fellow Japanese Americans and all Americans by refusing to comply, and continued to fight throughout his life for civil liberties. Loyal to a country that betrayed him, he was the ultimate patriot, even after being convicted and having it upheld in the Supreme Court, and not being exonerated until 1982, when the conviction was overturned. He, like so many other Japanese Americans, knew what it meant to be an American. Despite our heinous and unspeakable mistreatment of our Japanese American sisters and brothers in the internment camps, in a democracy like ours that's better than that, rounding them up like cattle and throwing them into prison camps, men, women, and children. Every imprisoned Japanese American had to answer 2 questions upon release. Are you willing to be drafted for the war or volunteer as a nurse? And do you swear allegiance to the Constitution and the laws of these United States? And do you agree not to interfere with the war efforts? They overwhelmingly said yes to both. That very same Constitution that was twisted and savaged by an interpretation that allowed their rights to be revoked and forcibly imprisoned, Japanese Americans overwhelmingly swore yes to uphold that Constitution. Loyal American citizens, innocent but imprisoned because of their ethnic heritage. They had something to prove. And the 442nd Regimental Combat Team was a group of Japanese Americans drafted straight out of the internment camps. And it was the most decorated combat unit in the United States in all of World War II. And that's just one example. The heroism and the selflessness and sacrifices of those service members was unparalleled. I salute the patriotism of advocates like my friend Takeshi Furumoto, who valiantly served our country in combat in ensuring that Mr. Korematsu's life and work and what he stood for and what his case meant for civil liberties for all Americans, then and now and for future generations like this guy's, will not soon be forgotten in the great state of New Jersey. And that's why we're so proud of passing the joint resolution.
I'm Carol Furumoto. We received this letter from Mako Yoshioka, the president of the Japan-U.S. Alliance of New Jersey. Let me read her letter. In these recent days of racial unrest and division, I feel it more important than ever that the legacy of Fred Korematsu and that period of our history not be forgotten. As the writer and philosopher George Santayana famously wrote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." It was Fred Korematsu's lifelong intent to make sure that shameful part of history was not only remembered, but acknowledged and amends made. And he succeeded in doing that with 4 presidents and being honored with President Bill Clinton awarding Fred Korematsu the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1998. One of the last things Korematsu said was, "I really hope that this will never happen to anybody else because of the way they look, if they look like the enemy of our country." I urge people to protest, but not with violence, and don't be afraid to speak up. One person can make a difference, even if it takes 40 years. As a president of Japan-U.S. Alliance of New Jersey Nihonjin Kai, and as a Japanese American, I am proud to have Fort Lee's proclamation of Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution on January 30th every year, so that the injustice done to the Japanese Americans will not happen to other ethnic population in the United States. And this can lead to passage in the state of New Jersey and ultimately in the entire United States. I am also proud to know Tak Furumoto as my dear friend who carries the legacy of Fred Korematsu. Mako Yoshioka, president of the Japan-U.S. Alliance of New Jersey.
Good day and hello. My name is Assemblyman Anthony Varelli, and I represent the 15th Legislative District in the New Jersey General Assembly, encompassing Mercer and Hunterdon counties. Together with Assemblyman Raj Mukherjee, I am the second prime sponsor of Assembly Joint Resolution 182, which would designate January 30th of each year as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution in New Jersey. I became friends with Mr. Takeshi Furumoto in December of 2020, when we shared a meal together at the residence of Ambassador Kanji Yamanouchi, Consul General of Japan in New York City. I am so glad that this year, 2021, is the second year that Mr. Korematsu's birthday is being officially recognized in the Borough of Fort Lee, New Jersey. It is so important that every person in this country knows and understands the importance of Mr. Korematsu's life and ultimately the racist infringement of civil rights and liberties that was the forced imprisonment of 120,000 permanent residents and American citizens of Japanese descent that occurred on United States soil in 1942. It is my sincere hope that we in New Jersey will one day be able to officially celebrate January 30th of each year as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. Thank you for allowing me to prepare these remarks. God bless everyone and have a great day.
Good day, everyone. I am delighted to participate in the second annual observance of Fred Korematsu Day in Fort Lee after the passage of resolution establishing Korematsu Day just last year. I would like to start by thanking Mr. and Mrs. Furumoto for organizing this amazing event. And under the COVID-19 pandemic, it must have been hard to prepare things online. I'm grateful to Takeshi-san and Caroline-san. Also, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Mayor Sokolich and the members of the Borough Council for their strong support to this resolution and commemoration. It is a special day today. We come together here to remember, to recognize, and to honor Mr. Korematsu's legacy in the defense of civil rights, civil liberties, and social justice. Thanks to the struggle of Fred Korematsu, the world is a better place now. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Korematsu left a very important message. I quote, "One person can make a difference even if it takes 40 years. This Japanese American proved by being fiercely loyal to his ideals and principles, individuals can greatly contribute to building the moral arc of history towards justice." His profound message continues to inspire us and also continues to unite us. 76 years after the end of the World War II, Japan and the United States have established the most solid alliance in the world. The friendship between the people of Japan and America is grounded in shared values such as freedom, democracy, justice, and human rights. In light of these, Fred Korematsu was a pioneer in upholding the values which both the United States and Japan cherish. Looking back the contemporary history, on August 10, 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. In this legislation, the United States government officially apologized and provided monetary compensation to survivors of the World War II Japanese American concentration camps, while calling it as a great injustice. 10 years later, in 1998, Fred Korematsu received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor in the United States, from the President Bill Clinton, in recognition of his courageous action as an inspiration, not just for the Japanese Americans, but also for all of us. And today, his amazing acts of courage and justice are alive through the tireless works by his daughter, Ms. Carol Furumoto. Now she's the head of the Fred T. Korematsu Institute in San Francisco. She's been instrumental in keeping Fred Korematsu's memory alive and helping the realization of the declaration of Fred Korematsu Days in many cities and states across the nation. And I'm so happy to hear that the resolution is going to be passed in the New Jersey state legislation soon. In this connection, let me express my deepest appreciation to Assemblyman Mukherjee, Assemblyman Berelli, and State Senator Lagana. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my belief that we have a responsibility to pass on Fred Korematsu's amazing stories to the next generations. In this context, it is nice to know that the Japanese History Council in New York was established just last month. This is a great initiative by the local Japanese and Japanese American community. Mr. Furumoto and Mrs. Onuma are the founding members of this council, and they are present at this event today. The mission of the council is to collect, preserve, and tell the histories to the public, and also to pass them to the future generations. The inspiring journey of Fred Korematsu should be a very important part of the council's program, I believe. In closing, I would like to reiterate my profound gratitude to everyone who have been committed to fulfilling Fred Korematsu's legacy in the United States. Let us work together to honor him and to make the world a better place. Please stay safe, and I wish everyone a wonderful new year. Thank you very much. ありがとう。
Mayor Sokolich and I like to thank all the speakers for the messages today. Now, if you're wondering why I'm wearing Vietnam combat fatigue today, it is to show my utmost respect to the Japanese American soldiers during the World War II, despite their parents being locked up in incarceration camp. And yet, they have become the most decorated unit in the entire United States Army history, the 442nd Regimental Unit. I'm so proud of my predecessors. I too volunteered and fought for this country in Vietnam. I know the horrors of war, yet they prevail. All of us are Americans. Try to better our country. My father came to this country right after the Spanish epidemic, 1921. He only had 8th grade education, but he gave us education so that we could become good Americans, and so we could dream our American dream. And dream we did. My sister became a doctor. My other sister became a high school teacher. And my wife and I were able to start real estate business, which is going for 47 years today. So today, Fred Korematsu Day, should give every American a chance to dream the American dream. So this is why today is so important. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to thank you very much for sharing the second anniversary of the Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution in the Borough of Fort Lee. As Tak mentioned earlier in the program, it took the Supreme Court 75 years to admit to its mistakes. A mistake that caused the incarceration of over 120,000 innocent Americans for nearly 4 years on American soil. This dark history must be told. Tak, a camp survivor, a decorated and disabled Vietnam vet, and I intend to send this message as a mission in our life so that no other Americans will ever have to face the same fate again. We're very close to passing this Fred Korematsu Day in the state of New Jersey, and we hope this year will be a year of healing and our Constitution will again be shining in our country. Thank you.